everybody. Welcome back to Overkill Reviews, Banger's heavy metal review show. I'm Sarah, of course. A little distracted because I'm currently threading a needle for a vest. Because today we're doing our first ever Overkill review for something that isn't an album. Before we start on this review, let me remind you, Patreon, subscribe, do the thing. Let's go. There's no suspense here. The thing I'm reviewing is on this table. It's a brand new coffee table metal book by metal photographer Peter Beste. It's called Defenders of the Faith, the heavy metal photography of Peter Beste, and it's out now via Sacred Bones Books. It is a coffee table book that focuses primarily on heavy metal vests. Before we begin, let's talk about who Peter is. Peter is a photographer who has had his work chronicled in numerous books. He's based in Oregon, and he has released books like the 2008 release True Norwegian Black Metal. And according to him, this Defenders of the Faith project was a long time coming. In a piece that he did for Revolver, he explains, "I first discovered Iron Maiden and Metallica in the pages of my favorite 80s metal mags when I was in the 4th grade. I was so taken by the power and energy of the music that I would sneak my 1980s foam-covered headphones into the sleeve of my jean jacket so I could secretly listen to my favorite Scorpions tape during recess. The obsession didn't stop there." And then we'll jump ahead a bit. After he finished the True Norwegian Black Metal book, he decided to work on a photo series of heavy metal vests because he finds it an interesting non-musical form of metal-inspired art. More than just a piece of clothing, these battle jackets are instantly recognizable signifiers that scream allegiance and membership to the tribe of heavy metal while conveying the wearer's specific tastes through their personalized mix of band patches, painted portraits, studs, chains, and more. If you'd like to read more about this project and about Peter's inspiration, please visit the link in the bio description because there's a Revolver article that he wrote about the project. If you're somebody who's into heavy metal vests, like I am, I have many of them. I actually did the vest for Banger on the wall over here as well. So, is this book worth the purchasing price? Is it of interest for people who are into heavy metal patches? And when I say people who are into patches, obviously we're into patches. We got a whole bunch of them. All right, let's focus on this damn book. Opening this book, it's actually quite a trip. There's a lot of faces and vests that I instantly recognize. Once you get in here, the very first page is Papa Fenriz himself of the Mighty Dark Throne. And then you keep going and you start seeing images of people, if you're in this scene, that you might recognize. There's Carmen from CX, I'm pretty sure. Great speed metal band from the United States. You go through, you'll see the guys from Deathhammer, you'll see Chris from Iron Kingdom. I mean, there's all these people and all these images that are just recognizable. Have you ever been to Keep It True Festival? This is obviously a scene of a woman pouring a beer into a man's throat from the second stage. It's pretty fun. Oh no, it's a dude. You can definitely see his crotch. Whoopsie. You get in further and you're seeing the foreword from Biff Byford of Saxon, of course. And then you get to the vests. So once you get into the vests, then the real fun begins. The thing about this book that I think is a bit unusual is the fact that none of the vests are labeled, so you're not really sure who they belong to, which could be interesting information, but it's kind of like being at a metal festival in that way. It's not like you know everybody who's walking around, so you just end up looking at all of the things that people have made. And that's kind of the joy of heavy metal vests, is that they are just an art project. It's basically like being in home ec when you're in junior high or whatnot, and you're sewing, and you get to make something that represents your taste, your style, all that fun stuff. So in that sense, it's really enjoyable to look through this book. And we actually ended up giving a call to somebody who is featured in this book numerous times, and that is Jake, the vocalist of Salt Lake City heavy metal band Visigoth. We had a quick chat about why vests are an important part of the underground scene, and we also discussed what is going on with Visigoth. Let's hear from him now. How many vests did you have featured in Defenders of the Faith?
If I'm not mistaken, I believe 4 of my vests were featured in the book. 2 of them don't actually exist anymore. Well, one of them I disassembled and have used those patches on other jackets. The other one actually got stolen out of my car with the Mill Road and Pokelget back patch on the back. It's in that book. Yeah, that got stolen from me, which totally sucks.
A lot of people who do vests actually have multiple of them, and you're someone who has multiple vests. Like, can you tell us why you've made multiple vests?
If you're a patch collector, you know how it is. You just sort of like end up with this big patch collection. It just happens. You get them at festivals and you get them at shows, and suddenly you've got way more patches than you could ever use on one jacket. So what do you do with those? You make more jackets. It's very cathartic, relaxing for me when I'm at home. I actually really enjoy putting a record on and just focusing on the record while my hands are occupied by the act of sewing a jacket. So because of those things, I've ended up with multiple jackets. And also there's the genre thing too. I've got one of my jackets, a long sleeve jacket, it's all black metal. So, it goes for the winter. So I have that for that different application.
Can you give me a quick summation of what has recently happened with Visigoth and what's coming up soon?
The most recent happenings with the band were the release of a 7-inch that we did in support of our recent European tour. And we're also playing the Decibel Beer and Metal Fest, holding it down as kind of the only USPM traditional band on that whole lineup. So that should be interesting and fun. And we're all beer enthusiasts, so we're very much looking forward to this.
Cool. Thanks, Jake. All that said, if you're still kind of scratching your head and you don't really get metal vests, they are a really enjoyable project to make, and it's something that people put a lot of time and effort into. Personally, I find the act of sewing to be enormously meditative and super calming, and I've also got a technique for sewing that I was gonna show y'all because why not? We're doing a strange episode of Overkill. See my vest. I've got this great Chastain Voice of the Cult patch. I've also got my favorite little vest. It's my black all-time favorite band's vest, and I want to sew this patch on. So basically what you want to do is get a sewing needle, a large one preferably because it's easier. You're going to want floss because floss does not shred and it doesn't rip, and so it's really easy to sew with. Thread the needle and you're going to want to double it up. Take the ends, then you're going to want to make a knot, and then you're going to want to go with your placement. So, gonna pin it down. Looks kind of straight. I mean, this isn't an exact science, so really, who cares? Get our needle, and away we go. You wanna make the stitches relatively small, about 1 centimeter between them. But you can see from the back that it's nice and uniform and tight. So on the final stitch, you're gonna wanna put it through, go underneath, and you're gonna wanna create a little knot. You're gonna wanna do that a couple of times just so it doesn't come out. And it's complete. You might notice that this vest has quite a bit of white threading on it. It's because I've chosen actively, because it's a black vest, to do white threading. This jean vest that I'm wearing, I use black instead, so you can't really see any of it. It's just an aesthetic choice. I find the white thread, the floss, to be easier to sew with, and the black to shred a lot more. But of course, it's all down to personal preference, and you do what you like. It's your fucking vest, right?
I really like the vest.
Because I've got a new patch on, I'm gonna put this one on instead, and then we're gonna seg into, the worst parts of the book or the review. We're gonna do what we do in Overkill. Let's go. So I, for one, know what I wanted more of in this book, and that was context. I wanted to read about the history of metal vests and the subsequent motorcycle culture that emerged from World War II veterans. I actually included a link in the video description about a project that focuses on that history, and if you're interested in getting more into that, then I would definitely recommend reading that. The other thing that I think would have been helpful is having captions beside each vest which indicated who it belonged to, just because when you go through this book, you start realizing that there's all these people who are featured and who are photographed who are actually a really enormous part of the trad metal scene in Europe and in North America. So for example, there's pictures of Kim Galdamez. She does Born for Burning Productions in LA, which is an awesome production company. There's Anna from Forever Street Metal Bitch, who does those really cool Celtic Frost sweaters that were in neon colors that, became this whole kerfuffle that a lot of people really loved, myself included. Being able to see that context, I think, would have made the pictures more valuable. But again, because you don't know who's wearing a vest at a festival when you're walking around and you're just looking at someone's back, I understand why they decided not to include that information directly on the pictures. So where does that leave us? Does a book on heavy metal vests get the same kind of skull rating as a heavy metal album? Let's find out. So spoiler alert, no, a book on heavy metal vests does not get the same skull rating as an album. It gets a heavy metal vest rating. And this book gets a mighty metal vest, a fist, and a beer for being really enjoyable for pouring over on the couch. Myself and my partner, we looked through it several times. We enjoyed cross-referencing who was in the book, the festival it was at, seeing if we had been to that festival. It was just fun, and it felt like this intimate experience that you really only ever get at a heavy metal festival. Before we head into the recommendations, we've got a shout out to the release party show happening for this book from Jake from Visigoth. Take it away, Jake.
It's Jake from Visigoth. If you are in the New York area in early October, check out the release party show for Peter Beste's book. Peter's a great guy. He's going to be there. Go meet him, congratulate him. The lineup is absolutely insane. Crypt Sermon, who just released one of this year's best albums, in my opinion. Magic Circle, who also released one of this year's best albums, in my opinion. Up-and-coming band that's been blowing everyone away, Sanhedrin. This whole lineup is going to be great. So come celebrate with us. We'd love to see you there.
Now for the actual shout-outs. For this edition of Shoutouts, I want to talk about the bands featured in this book who have awesome albums that you should check out. I'm not going to recommend, the Dark Thrones like Old Star. It's a new album that came out this year. It's awesome. Or the Manila Roads that are featured in the book. Instead, I want to talk about obscure stuff that'll be maybe not on your radar. So on page 49, you will find the Norwegian black thrash band, Deathhammer. They are exactly as fun as their picture implies. And they have this fantastic album. It's called Onwards to the Pits. You should definitely listen to that one. On page 200, you'll find the mighty Canadian icon Thor. If you're not familiar with him, please go on a binge because goddamn, he's a ton of fun. His songs are like AC/DC meets Sword and Sorcery. It's all about thunder on the tundra. The songs are super simple. They'll have you singing along. In that vein, I would recommend his album Unchained. Yes, he is very handsome. And finally, on page 76 of the book, you will see a picture of Iron Kingdom. They are a Canadian band who's releasing their new album on October 4th. It's titled On the Hunt, and it's available for pre-order now from ironkingdom.com. This band is a ripping trad metal band from Surrey, British Columbia. I think that they deserve a lot more attention than what they've received. That's it. Bye.